The unseen visitor. Kevin Shaw was no stranger to the feeling of thrill. He was known across the U.S. Air Force as the daring fighter pilot, the one who never shied away from risky maneuvers that left others breathless. Kevin had spent years honing his skills in the skies, pushing himself and his jet to the limit, always seeking the next challenge. Yet, for all the excitement his job brought, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Life on Earth had grown predictable, even with the adrenaline-packed exercises and occasional high-stakes missions. On a crisp autumn evening, Kevin decided to escape the routine, if only for a few hours. He packed his car and drove into the mountains, far from the hum of the base. The solitude of the open road and the scent of pine trees calmed him. He drove without a specific destination, only knowing he wanted to leave behind the regimented world of military life for a little while. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the mountains, and he pulled over at a scenic overlook. Kevin got out of the car and took a deep breath, letting the silence wash over him as he watched the sky turn from gold to deep purple. Just as Kevin settled against the hood of his car, something unexpected happened. A strange sensation prickled the back of his neck, an instinct he developed from years of training and trusting his senses. The air around him felt charged, like the tense calm before a thunderstorm. Kevin scanned the area, but the overlook was deserted. He began to relax, thinking it was just the quiet playing tricks on him. Then, without warning, a beam of light descended from the sky, illuminating him in a blinding white glow. It was as if the stars themselves had reached down to claim him. Before he could even react, a powerful force seemed to pull him upwards, and the ground vanished beneath his feet. His surroundings blurred, and he felt a rush of air as he was transported to a new location. His instincts screamed at him to stay alert, but his senses were overwhelmed by the sudden change. The light faded, and as Kevin's vision cleared, he found himself inside a large metallic room bathed in a soft blue light. The walls appeared to pulse rhythmically, and everything around him seemed to hum with energy. Kevin steadied himself, trying to understand where he was and how he had arrived. His confusion grew as he looked around and saw he wasn't alone. Standing before him were 4 figures, each radiating a strange yet undeniable beauty. Their skin shimmered with an iridescent glow, and their eyes sparkled with an intensity he had never seen before. They looked almost human, yet otherworldly at the same time. The woman standing at the center of the group stepped forward, her gaze piercing but filled with curiosity. She wore an air of authority, and Kevin sensed she was their leader. "Welcome, Kevin Shaw," she said in a voice that was both soothing and commanding. "I am Aurelia, commander of this crew." Kevin's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. "What? Who are you? Where am I?" Aurelia extended a hand in a calming gesture. "You are aboard the Lunara, our ship. We mean you no harm, Kevin. In fact, we are in need of your help." The words sounded surreal. Aliens? On a spaceship? And they needed his help. Kevin was a fighter pilot, not a cosmic hero. But the sincerity in her voice was hard to ignore, and despite the absurdity of the situation, he found himself listening. Aurelia continued, "We come from the planet Endar, located in a distant galaxy. We are part of an elite team tasked with protecting our world, but we face a dire threat. A rogue group from our kind has stolen a powerful device known as the Zephron. It has the ability to harness cosmic energy and transform it into weapons capable of unimaginable destruction." Kevin's skepticism wavered as he watched the sullen expressions of Aurelia and her crew. The gravity of their mission was clear. "And you think I can help with this rogue alien problem?" Aurelia nodded, her eyes unwavering. "Yes, you are a skilled warrior, Kevin. We observed your training drills and saw how you handled your aircraft with the precision and courage that we need. The rogue group is powerful, but they're not invincible. We believe with your instincts and our technology, we might stand a chance." Kevin exhaled, trying to process everything. He was just a pilot, accustomed to facing challenges within Earth's atmosphere. But now he was being asked to join an interstellar mission. His mind screamed that it was madness, yet something deep inside urged him to consider it. The way Aurelia looked at him, like a soldier entrusting him with a vital responsibility, sparked a long-lost excitement within him. "All right," he said, trying to steady his voice. "I'm listening, but I need to know everything. Who exactly are these enemies, and how do you plan to use me?" Aurelia gestured toward a screen on the wall, which projected a holographic map of the solar system. She pointed at Mars, where a small, blinking red light indicated their target's location. "Our enemies have fortified themselves here. They plan to use the Zephyron to transform themselves into super beings, effectively making them unstoppable. If they succeed, they'll have the power to destroy planets, including Earth." Kevin felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just about some distant threat. Earth was at risk, too. He nearly couldn't walk away from something like this, no matter how unreal it seemed. He took a deep breath, his mind already shifting into mission mode. "What do you need me to do?" Aurelia's eyes softened, a hint of relief visible in her gaze. "We need you to help us infiltrate their base. They're heavily armed, and we cannot win by sheer force. But if we combine our technology with your combat skills, we might have a chance to disable the Zephyron before they achieve their goal." Kevin nodded, his mind already calculating the risks and challenges. He wasn't one to turn away from danger, and if Earth's safety was at stake, he was ready to give it everything he had. "I'll do it," he said, locking eyes with Aurelia. "But we're going to need a plan, a solid one." Aurelia smiled, a spark of determination in her eyes. "Then let's get started. Time is running out." And so Kevin Shaw, Earth's finest fighter pilot, embarked on a journey beyond anything he could have imagined. The skies he was used to had expanded into the vastness of space, and his mission had become a fight for the survival of not just his world, but others. Preparing for the impossible, Kevin's mind spun as he processed the enormity of his situation. This wasn't a mission for the Air Force or a covert operation he could anticipate. This was intergalactic warfare, and he, a mere pilot, was somehow the chosen ally in a battle of alien powers. He shook off the disbelief. If his years as a fighter pilot had taught him anything, it was that in a crisis, doubts could get you killed. Focus on the objective, he reminded himself. He turned to Aurelia, who had been studying him with a calm, measured gaze. "All right, Aurelia," he began, meeting her gaze with resolve. "If we're going to pull this off, I need to know exactly what I'm up against. These rogues, they're armed, powerful, and prepared. What makes the Zephyron so dangerous?" Aurelia nodded, appreciating his direct approach. She led him to a large, semi-transparent screen that flickered to life with a holographic model of the Zephyron. The image floated in the air, rotating slowly, displaying an intricate design of glowing circuits and crystal-like conduits. Kevin leaned forward, studying it closely. "The Zephyron," she explained, her voice a mix of awe and caution, "is a device of immense cosmic energy. It was originally designed to be a peaceful instrument, harnessing the power of stars to fuel our cities and sustain life on Endar. But in the wrong hands—" Her voice trailed off, and her expression grew darker. "It can become a weapon capable of shattering planets, bending gravity, and manipulating entire energy fields." Kevin's gut tightened. "And these rogues, they're planning to use it to become super beings." Aurelia nodded. "Exactly. They aim to harness its power to alter their own physical and mental capabilities, giving them strength and intelligence far beyond normal Endarians. If they succeed, they will become unstoppable, and they'll have no reason to stop with our planet." Kevin took a deep breath, letting the weight of her words sink in. "So, what's the plan? I assume we can't just charge in and hope for the best." Aurelia allowed a slight smile, a flicker of her own determination mirroring Kevin's. "Precisely. We need to be strategic. I've already reviewed their current fortifications on Mars. They set up a high-security perimeter and are continuously patrolling with automated defense drones. They'll anticipate an attack, but they won't expect an Earth pilot with our advanced technology. That's our advantage. Kevin absorbed her words, formulating a plan. Do I get to use one of your ships then? My jet isn't exactly equipped for outer space. She nodded, gesturing for him to follow her down a narrow corridor that led to a docking bay. As they walked, he noticed the alien ship was an elegant fusion of curves and angles, pulsing with a soft glow that made the metal appear almost organic. The whole place felt alive, a marvel of technology far beyond anything he had seen. When they arrived at the docking bay, Kevin's eyes widened. There, resting in the center of the chamber, was a sleek, silver craft that seemed to hum with power. Its body was streamlined, and it looked faster and more agile than anything he had flown. The cockpit was an oval, shielded by a dark, iridescent canopy that glistened under the soft lights. "This is the Vesper," Aurelia said, a note of pride in her voice. "One of our fastest scout ships, equipped with advanced stealth technology and shielding systems. With this, you'll be able to evade most of their defenses and, if needed, take a hit without suffering too much damage." Kevin ran his hand along the surface of the Vesper, feeling the energy pulsing beneath the metal. "She's a beauty. But if I'm flying this, I'll need to get familiar with the controls fast. It's nothing like the jets I'm used to." "True," Aurelia replied, "but I have faith in your adaptability. Besides, I'll be right beside you to guide you through it." Kevin's gaze shifted back to her, realizing for the first time that this mission wasn't just his alone. Aurelia, despite her authority and calm demeanor, was taking a huge risk as well. He couldn't imagine the pressure of defending an entire planet, let alone entrusting such a critical mission to an outsider. Respect for her grew in him, and he felt a renewed sense of responsibility. "All right, Commander," he said, a hint of a grin breaking his usually serious expression. "Let's get this show on the road." They spent hours in the training chamber, where Aurelia showed him the Vesper's controls. She explained the layout, pointing out each instrument's purpose and functionality. The ship responded to commands through a combination of touch sensors and mind-link technology that required a user's mental focus to activate certain features. Kevin was skeptical about the mind link at first, but Aurelia assured him it was intuitive. By the end of their training session, Kevin was familiar enough with the Vesper to maneuver in basic scenarios. However, he knew that combat would be a different story. He was learning on the fly, quite literally, and if things went south, there wouldn't be a second chance. As they prepared for the upcoming mission, Kevin found himself oddly at ease. It was as though he was born for this moment, as if all his years in the cockpit had been preparing him for something beyond the boundaries of Earth. After hours of training, Aurelia debriefed him on the plan. The goal was to approach the rogue encampment under the cover of Mars's shifting sandstorms. The storms would help conceal the Vesper's approach, allowing them to get close enough to disable the Zephron's power source temporarily. Once they weakened it, Aurelia's crew would move in to neutralize the rogues. As they wrapped up their strategy, Kevin felt a pang of nervous excitement. He was no stranger to risky missions, but this was unlike anything he'd ever faced. Yet the thought of going head-to-head with alien rogues, defending his planet alongside an alien crew, filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. In the final moments before they launched, Kevin found himself face-to-face with Aurelia in the Vesper's cramped cockpit. She studied him with an intensity that made him feel she was seeing through him. "Kevin, I need you to know," she began, her tone softer than before, "this mission is dangerous. If you want to back out, I will understand." Kevin looked back at her, unwavering. "Aurelia, I'm a fighter pilot. I don't know any other way to live. If Earth and your planet are in danger, then backing out isn't an option. Let's finish this." Aurelia smiled, a genuine warm expression that broke through her usual composure. With a slight nod, she pressed a control on the dashboard, and the Vesper roared to life, its engines emitting a powerful hum. They lifted off, gliding smoothly out of the Lunaris docking bay and into the vastness of space. As they approached Mars, the planet loomed large, its red surface stretching out beneath them. The Vespa's controls hummed under Kevin's fingertips, and he felt an exhilaration he hadn't experienced since his first flight. He was flying, yes, but this was something far greater, an adventure into the unknown. The Vespa slipped through Mars' atmosphere, its advanced stealth systems concealing their presence. Sandstorms billowed around them, their ship navigating effortlessly through the fierce winds and turbulent clouds of dust. Aurelia guided him, pointing out coordinates and warning of the automated defenses that could detect them if they drifted too close. As they neared the rogue base, Kevin's heartbeat quickened. His hands tightened on the controls as he focused, his senses sharp. This was it, the beginning of a mission that would push him beyond his limits, challenging everything he knew. "Steady," Aurelia whispered beside him, her voice steady and calm. "Once we're in range, we'll begin the assault. Remember, our goal is to disable the Zephron's power core. If we succeed, the rogues will be vulnerable." Kevin nodded, his mind locked onto the target. Whatever doubts he had were now gone. He was ready to protect Earth, ready to fight, and ready to become something more than just a fighter pilot. In that moment, with Mars looming below and Aurelia at his side, he realized he was on the adventure he'd always dreamed of, an adventure that would take him to the very edges of the universe, into the heart of the storm. As Kevin guided the Vespa through Mars' stormy atmosphere, he kept his senses sharp, his gaze fixed on the holographic display showing their approach to the rogue encampment. Every now and then, fierce gusts of sound would rattle the ship, but the Vespa's shields held strong, cutting a clean path through the relentless waves of red dust and swirling winds. Beside him, Aurelia sat focused and calm, her eyes scanning for any signs of enemy activity. "Stay low and maintain speed," Aurelia instructed, her voice steady over the hum of the Vespa's engines. "Their sensors are powerful, but the sandstorm is our ally. As long as we remain under the cover of these winds, they won't detect us." Kevin glanced at her, nodding. "Got it. So we sneak in, disable their power core, and get out before they even know we're there. Sounds like a classic hit and run, but something tells me it won't be that easy." Aurelia gave a faint smile. "You're right. The rogues are intelligent, and they're expecting us to make a move sooner or later. But what they're not expecting is the unconventional thinking of an Earth pilot." Kevin smirked. "Well, let's give them something to be surprised about." Ahead, the outline of the rogue base appeared faintly in the sandstorm, a series of low, armored structures clustered together like a fortress, their metallic surfaces barely visible under the haze of red dust. Kevin could see faint lights emanating from the buildings, illuminating the swirling clouds around them. The rogue aliens had set up a formidable defensive perimeter, complete with automated turrets and patrolling drones, all designed to detect any intruders. "See those drones?" Aurelia pointed to the small dots zigzagging in the air near the outer perimeter. "They're programmed to shoot on sight. We need to bypass them, or we'll alert the entire base." Kevin tightened his grip on the controls, his mind racing with possibilities. Are there any weak points in their formation? A gap we could exploit? Aurelia nodded. "There's a small window in their patrol cycle. If we time it right, we can slip through undetected, but we'll need precise timing and perfect maneuvering." Kevin cracked his knuckles, adrenaline flooding his veins. "Then let's do it. You point the way, and I'll make sure we're as smooth as a shadow." The two watched the drone's patterns on the display, waiting for the exact moment to break through. Kevin's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Finally, the opening appeared, a narrow gap between the patrols, barely wide enough for the Vespa to slip through. "Now," Aurelia commanded, and Kevin sprang into action. He guided the Vespa forward, deftly weaving through the drones, barely breathing as they skimmed past the glowing, watchful orbs of the patrolling sentries. He made sure to keep his speed steady, not too fast, not too slow, mimicking the movement of the sandstorm as best he could. One false move, and they'd be detected. But Kevin's instincts, honed by years of navigating high-stakes combat situations, kicked in. The Vespa moved with fluid precision, every slight turn and adjustment executed perfectly. His mind tuned into the rhythm of the patrol, each heartbeat synced with the shifting patterns of the drones. After what felt like an eternity, they finally cleared the patrol zone. The rogue base loomed just ahead, its towering structures imposing and silent against the chaotic background of the storm. Aurelia exhaled, a slight look of relief crossing her face. "Impressive. You handled that like an Endarian pilot." Kevin grinned, a spark of pride warming him. "Guess I'm getting the hang of this space stuff." She gestured to a landing zone, a small, unprotected spot on the edge of the base where they could touch down without drawing attention. Kevin eased the Vespa down, the landing smooth and silent, like a shadow blending into the darkness. They quickly powered down the ship, and the cockpit opened with a soft hiss, letting in a rush of cold, thin Martian air. Aurelia and Kevin climbed out, donning lightweight cloaks that would blend with the sandstorm and conceal them from any stray sensors. Aurelia handed him a small, sleek device that resembled a miniature tablet, but Kevin quickly realized it was more advanced than anything Earth had developed. "This is a synchronizer," she explained, her voice barely audible over the wind. "It will map out the energy frequencies in the base, leading us to the power core. But be cautious. The synchronizer will also alert us if any unexpected energy surges occur, which could mean trouble." Kevin nodded, slipping the device into a pouch on his cloak. "Understood. Lead the way." They moved quickly and quietly, ducking behind structures and keeping close to the walls as they crept deeper into the base. The sandstorm cloaked their movements, but it also made it harder to see ahead, forcing them to rely on the synchronizer to guide them. They reached the main building, a colossal structure with walls that seemed to absorb light, giving it an eerie, shadowy presence even in the storm. Aurelia checked the synchronizer, nodding to Kevin to follow her to a narrow maintenance hatch hidden along the side. She used a small pen-like tool to disable the security system, and the hatch slid open with a soft click. Inside, the air was warmer, and a faint hum resonated through the walls. The hallways were dimly lit, casting long shadows that danced around them as they moved. Kevin followed Aurelia through a series of corridors, his senses on high alert for any signs of patrols or alarms. As they approached the power core chamber, a low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. Aurelia stopped, glancing at the synchronizer, which began flashing with erratic energy readings. "This isn't right," she muttered, her face tense. "The power core is active, but it's outputting far more energy than it should. They're already starting the transformation process." Kevin clenched his jaw. "Then we're running out of time. Can we shut it down?" Aurelia nodded but looked uncertain. "If we reach the core control, we can initiate a shutdown, but we'll have to override their security protocols, which won't go unnoticed." "Then we'll work fast," Kevin replied, determination hardening his gaze. They reached the entrance to the core chamber, and Aurelia used her access tool to override the lock. As the door slid open, Kevin caught his breath. Inside, the power core glowed with a fierce, pulsating light, casting eerie reflections across the walls. The air was thick with an electric energy, and he could feel the heat radiating from the core, a tangible reminder of the power they were up against. Aurelia approached the control panel, her fingers dancing across the interface as she began the shutdown process. Alarms immediately blared, echoing through the chamber. Kevin turned, his hand on the small, alien weapon Aurelia had given him, ready to face whatever guards might come. "Aurelia, we've got company," he warned, hearing footsteps approaching from the hall outside. "Just a few more seconds," she replied, her voice tense. "I'm almost there." The footsteps grew louder, and Kevin positioned himself by the door, bracing for the fight. The first rogue alien burst through, and Kevin fired without hesitation. The weapon pulsed, sending a bolt of energy that knocked the alien back. Another rushed in, and Kevin dodged, narrowly avoiding a blast from their own weapon before retaliating with a swift, precise shot. Aurelia's voice cut through the chaos. "Done. The shutdown sequence is active." The core's glow began to dim, its energy levels dropping as the shutdown process took effect. But the alarm had drawn more enemies, and Kevin and Aurelia found themselves surrounded. The rogues were tall, imposing figures, each one radiating an aura of power and menace. Their eyes glowed with a fierce intensity, fueled by a fragment of the Zephron's energy. "Aurelia, I don't think we're getting out of here without a fight," Kevin muttered, his voice steady despite the odds. She nodded, raising her weapon. "Then let's give them one they won't forget." They fought side by side, Kevin's quick reflexes and Aurelia's combat skills creating a seamless rhythm as they took on the rogues. Every move was calculated, every shot precise. Kevin felt a surge of adrenaline unlike anything he'd experienced on Earth. He was fighting for more than survival. He was fighting for a cause that spanned worlds. Finally, as the last rogue fell, the alarm died down, and a heavy silence settled over the chamber. Aurelia glanced at the core, now completely powered down, its threat neutralized for the moment. "We did it," she said, catching her breath, a note of relief in her voice. Kevin smiled, a spark of pride in his eyes. Not bad for a fighter pilot and an alien commander. Aurelia chuckled softly, a rare glimpse of warmth breaking through her usual composure. "Not bad at all, but this is just the beginning. We may have delayed them, but the rogues won't stop until they have the Zephron's power again." Kevin's expression hardened, his resolve stronger than ever. "Then we make sure they never get the chance." With the core disabled and the first victory under their belts, Kevin and Aurelia knew the road ahead would be dangerous. But together, they had proven that even the most impossible missions were within reach. The battle for the galaxy had just begun, and they were ready to face whatever came next. Into enemy territory. With the power core of the rogue base temporarily disabled, Kevin and Aurelia knew they had little time before the rogues regrouped. Their initial victory had granted them a narrow window to strike again, but it also meant the enemy would be on high alert. They couldn't afford to linger, yet the next stage of the mission was even riskier. They had to infiltrate the heart of the rogue encampment and locate the Zephron itself. As they hurried back through the dim, metal corridors of the base, Kevin's senses were heightened. Every footstep seemed amplified in the silence, and every shadow stretched ominously in the flickering emergency lights that pulsed through the base. The power outage they had triggered left most of the hallways shrouded in darkness, but Kevin felt as if countless eyes were watching them, waiting to strike. "We need to find the control room," Aurelia whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's where they'll be monitoring the Zephron. It's likely the most heavily guarded section of the base." Kevin nodded, understanding the stakes. "Once we're there, what's the plan? Do we destroy the Zephron, or can we secure it somehow?" Aurelia hesitated, a rare uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "Destroying it would be safest, but the energy it contains is volatile. If we damage it improperly, the release of power could be catastrophic, not just for us but for Mars and potentially even Earth." Kevin grimaced, the weight of her words sinking in. They were carrying out a mission with stakes higher than he could have imagined, where a single misstep could have cosmic consequences. They moved in silence, their footsteps soft on the metallic floor as they approached the control room. As they rounded a corner, Kevin caught sight of two rogue guards patrolling near the entrance. These weren't just any guards, they were equipped with advanced armor that shimmered faintly, like a layer of energy shield covering their bodies. "Those energy shields," Kevin muttered, studying the guards. "They look tough. Any chance we can get past them without drawing attention?" Aurelia shook her head. "Not likely, but I have something that might give us a brief advantage." From her pouch, she pulled out a small metallic sphere that fit comfortably in the palm of her hand. Kevin raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What is that? A neural disruptor, she explained. It's designed to temporarily scramble the cognitive functions of any being within range. It should disorient them for a few seconds, long enough for us to take them down. Kevin nodded, a spark of admiration for her ingenuity flickering in his gaze. All right, I'll follow your lead. They moved closer, crouching in the shadows, as Aurelia activated the disruptor. The sphere emitted a barely perceptible hum, and as she rolled it toward the guards, it began to glow with a soft blue light. The guards halted, a momentary look of confusion passing over their faces as the disruptor took effect. Without hesitation, Kevin surged forward, using the element of surprise to knock out the first guard with a swift, calculated strike. Aurelia moved in tandem, delivering a precise blow to the second guard, and within moments, both guards were down, their shields momentarily flickering before going dark. They dragged the guards into a nearby storage room, making sure they were securely out of sight before continuing down the hallway. The control room was just ahead, and Kevin could feel the tension mounting with every step. This was the heart of the rogue base, and he knew they were venturing into enemy territory with no backup, relying only on each other and their wits. As they approached the door, Aurelia accessed the control panel, bypassing the security system with a few swift taps. The door slid open with a low hiss, revealing a vast chamber filled with holographic displays and consoles, each one pulsating with streams of data. The room was dimly lit, the flickering screens casting an eerie glow on the sleek, metallic surfaces. At the far end of the room, a large translucent cylinder stood upright, surrounded by an intricate web of cables and conduits that pulsed with a faint energy. Inside the cylinder floated the Zephyrin, its core glowing with a powerful, almost hypnotic light. The sight was mesmerizing, yet ominous, as if the device itself were a living entity, radiating an energy that felt both beautiful and dangerous. Kevin's eyes widened as he took in the sight. That's it, he murmured, feeling the weight of its power even from across the room. That's what they're willing to destroy worlds for. Aurelia nodded, her gaze fixed on the Zephyrin. We can't let them activate it. If they complete the transformation, they'll be unstoppable. They moved quickly to the main console, scanning the controls to understand the rogue's setup. Aurelia's fingers flew over the interface, her eyes narrowing as she decrypted the foreign symbols and coded commands. Can you disable it? Kevin asked, his voice tense. Aurelia's face was set with concentration. Not easily. They've encrypted the system with layers of security. But if I can access the primary interface, I may be able to initiate a controlled shutdown sequence. It will take time, though. Time they didn't have. As she worked, Kevin kept watch, his weapon ready, every muscle tense and alert. The sense of impending danger hung thick in the air, and he knew it was only a matter of moments before the rogues discovered their intrusion. Suddenly, a warning blared from one of the monitors. Aurelia's eyes widened. They've detected us. Reinforcements are on their way. Kevin's jaw clenched. Then we make a stand. He positioned himself by the entrance, his weapon trained on the doorway as the heavy thud of footsteps echoed down the corridor. The rogues were coming, and they sounded ready for a fight. Aurelia continued working on the console, her fingers a blur as she bypassed security protocols with practiced precision. The first rogue appeared in the doorway, tall and imposing, his eyes burning with a fierce, determined light. Kevin fired, the shot hitting the rogue square in the chest. The energy from his weapon pulsed against the rogue's armor, forcing him back. But the rogues were relentless, and more followed, their weapons drawn, advancing with deadly intent. Kevin fought with everything he had, his instincts and training driving him as he defended the doorway. Shots echoed through the control room, each blast illuminating the shadows as the rogues pushed forward. The battle was intense, every moment a test of skill and endurance, but Kevin held his ground, determined to protect Aurelia as she worked. Aurelia, he shouted over the chaos. How much longer? Just a few more seconds, she replied, her voice strained with concentration. "I'm almost through the final layer." Kevin gritted his teeth, bracing himself as another wave of rogues charged forward. He sidestepped their attacks, firing with precision, his every move a testament to his years of training. But he knew he couldn't hold them off forever. Finally, Aurelia's voice rang out. "I've done it. The shutdown sequence is active." A powerful hum filled the room as the Zephron's glow began to fade, its energy output diminishing. The rogues hesitated, glancing back at the device, a flicker of panic crossing their faces. They knew their plan was unraveling, and their moment of hesitation was all Kevin needed. With a surge of determination, he fought back with renewed vigor, driving the remaining rogues from the control room. The last one fell, his weapon clattering to the floor, and an eerie silence settled over the chamber. Kevin lowered his weapon, catching his breath as he turned to Aurelia, who was watching the Zephron, her expression a mixture of relief and caution. "It's done," she said quietly, her gaze fixed on the now dormant device. "The shutdown is complete. The Zephron is secure, for now." Kevin walked over, standing beside her as they looked at the Zephron. Its once vibrant glow had dimmed to a faint shimmer, like a star on the verge of fading. Despite its dormant state, he could still feel the residual power radiating from it, a reminder of the immense danger it posed. "So what now?" he asked, his voice subdued. Aurelia glanced at him, her eyes thoughtful. "We can't leave it here. The rogues will stop at nothing to reclaim it. We need to transport it somewhere safe, where they'll never find it. But we'll need to call in reinforcements from Endar to secure it properly." Kevin nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Then let's make that call. We'll make sure this thing never falls into the wrong hands again." As they prepared to transmit a signal to Endar, Kevin felt a deep sense of accomplishment mixed with a lingering tension. They had won a crucial victory, but the battle was far from over. The rogue forces would regroup, and their thirst for power would drive them to pursue the Zephron relentlessly. But as long as he and Aurelia were standing, they wouldn't let the galaxy fall into chaos. Together, they would ensure that the Zephron's destructive power was contained, protecting both their worlds from the rogues' deadly ambitions. The journey ahead would be perilous, but Kevin knew one thing for certain: he was ready to face whatever challenges lay beyond the stars, side by side with Aurelia. The relentless pursuit. With the Zephron disabled and temporarily secure, Kevin and Aurelia moved swiftly to send a distress signal to Endar. The looming realization that the rogues would stop at nothing to reclaim the device weighed heavily on them. Every second counted, and they knew the clock was ticking down to a new confrontation. Once the Endarian reinforcements arrived, they could transport the Zephron to a secure facility, far from the reach of those who sought its power. Inside the control room, Aurelia patched into the Lunora's communications system, establishing a link with her home planet. The holographic screen flickered to life, displaying a cascade of symbols that translated into Endarian script. Her fingers moved deftly over the controls, sending a secure message through a hidden frequency that only Endarian forces could detect. Kevin stood by her side, his gaze steady, though his mind was racing with a sense of urgency. "How long will it take for reinforcements to reach us?" he asked, glancing at the dimly pulsing Zephron. The faint glow reminded him of the dangerous potential it held, even in its deactivated state. Aurelia looked up, her eyes grave. "Even at top speed, it will take them several hours to reach Mars. In the meantime, we're on our own." Kevin nodded, steeling himself. "Then we'll hold them off until help arrives. The rogues won't back down without a fight." The transmission was sent, but almost as soon as Aurelia finished, a warning signal blared on the console. Kevin's stomach twisted as he saw a new wave of red blips appear on the holographic map. The rogue forces were mobilizing, and their ships were converging on the base with alarming speed. They had detected the shutdown and were rushing back to secure the Zephron before it was too late. "We have incoming," Aurelia murmured, her tone calm but laced with tension. "They're regrouping, and it looks like they're bringing everything they've got. Kevin took a deep breath, his gaze shifting to the Vesper docked just outside the control room. Then we give them a welcome they'll never forget. Aurelia nodded, a determined spark igniting in her eyes. She retrieved a set of advanced weapons from the storage compartments lining the control room walls. These weren't just ordinary firearms. They were Endarian pulse blasters, each one capable of delivering concentrated energy bursts powerful enough to disable even the most heavily armored rogue soldier. She handed one to Kevin, who examined it carefully. "You'll need to charge it before each shot, but it's strong enough to pierce their shields," she explained, "and it has a range that will keep us at a safe distance if we need to engage from afar." Kevin grinned, feeling a surge of confidence. "Looks like you came prepared. Let's hope they aren't expecting us to be armed like this." They moved quickly, setting up defensive positions around the Zephron chamber. Kevin took one side of the entrance while Aurelia took the other, both of them keeping their weapons at the ready. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor, growing louder with each passing second. Kevin's heart raced, but he remained calm, his training kicking in as he prepared for the inevitable clash. The first wave of rogues burst through the doorway, their armored figures imposing as they raised their weapons, ready to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. But Kevin and Aurelia were ready. With a quick nod to each other, they unleashed a barrage of pulse blasts, each shot landing with precision and force. The rogue soldiers staggered back, their shields flickering under the relentless onslaught. Kevin moved with calculated speed, aiming each shot carefully, his instincts and training guiding him as he fought. He had faced intense battles on Earth, but this was different. He was up against an enemy with alien technology, with stakes that reached far beyond his own world. Aurelia fought beside him, her movements fluid and precise, her focus unwavering. Together, they formed a formidable line of defense, their synchronized attacks catching the rogue soldiers off guard. The chamber echoed with the hum of energy blasts and the sharp clang of armor as the rogues struggled to press forward. But the rogues were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. For every soldier they took down, two more seemed to appear, each one more determined than the last. Kevin felt the weight of exhaustion beginning to creep into his limbs, but he pushed it aside, drawing on every ounce of strength he had. As the fight raged on, one of the rogue soldiers managed to break through their defenses, lunging toward the Zephron with a determined gleam in his eyes. Kevin's heart skipped a beat, and without thinking, he launched himself forward, intercepting the rogue before he could reach the device. They grappled, each one fighting for control, but Kevin's tenacity won out, and with a swift strike, he disabled the rogue, sending him sprawling to the ground. Aurelia was by his side in an instant, her breathing heavy but her resolve unshaken. "They're not giving up," she said, her voice low. "They know they can't let the Zephron slip out of their grasp." Kevin nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "Then we make sure they understand it's not theirs to take." Just as the words left his mouth, the room shook with a sudden, powerful tremor. Kevin and Aurelia exchanged tense glances as the control panel lit up with warnings. The rogues had deployed a high-intensity sonic device outside the chamber, attempting to breach the walls through sheer force. Aurelia quickly analyzed the readings, her face pale. "They're using a sonic disruptor. If they succeed, it will shatter the containment field around the Zephron." Kevin clenched his jaw, his mind racing. "Can we stop it?" Aurelia shook her head, frustration evident in her eyes. "Not without reinforcements. The device is too powerful for just the two of us to neutralize directly." Kevin took a deep breath, thinking rapidly. "Then we don't have to destroy it. We just need to buy time. If we can distract them long enough, we might force them to turn off the disruptor to engage us directly." Aurelia considered his plan, her gaze steely. "It's risky, but it might be our best chance." Without another word, they moved back into the corridor, carefully weaving their way toward the source of the disruptor's signal. The vibrations grew stronger as they neared the entrance, each tremor a reminder of the damage the device could inflict if left unchecked. They reached the outer perimeter of the chamber, where the rogues had set up a makeshift barricade using portable shields and heavy weapons to protect the disruptor. The device itself was massive, a sleek, cylindrical structure emitting a low hum that resonated through the walls. Kevin gestured to Aurelia, signaling her to take the left flank while he moved to the right. They exchanged a final glance, a wordless agreement that this would be their stand. As they approached the rogue forces, Kevin fired a warning shot, drawing the attention of the soldiers guarding the disruptor. The rogues turned, their expressions a mix of surprise and anger, and in an instant, the battle reignited. Kevin dodged a barrage of energy blasts, his pulse blaster firing back with deadly accuracy. Beside him, Aurelia fought with a fierce determination, each shot carefully aimed, each movement precise. The rogues, realizing they were under attack, redirected their focus from the disruptor to Kevin and Aurelia. The sonic vibrations faded as the device was temporarily deactivated, giving them a brief but critical reprieve. "Now," Aurelia shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Kevin seized the moment, charging forward and hurling a small explosive device at the disruptor. It detonated with a brilliant flash, sending shockwaves through the road lines and temporarily disabling their shields. The rogues staggered, momentarily disoriented, and Kevin and Aurelia pressed the advantage, their combined firepower driving the enemy back. But even as they fought, Kevin knew this victory would be short-lived. They had managed to stop the disruptor, but the rogues were regrouping, their numbers seemingly endless. Sweat poured down his face, his breathing ragged, yet he refused to give up. Every fiber of his being was focused on one goal, holding the line until help arrived. The chamber shook again, and this time, a bright light filled the room as a familiar hum reverberated through the air. Aurelia looked up, a glimmer of hope lighting her face. "The reinforcements. They're here," she whispered, a smile breaking through her fatigue. From the far end of the corridor, a new wave of Indarian soldiers burst onto the scene, their advanced armor glinting under the flickering lights. They moved with precision and strength, each one trained for battle, each one ready to defend their world and protect the Zephyron. With a renewed sense of purpose, Kevin and Aurelia joined forces with the Indarian soldiers, the tide of the battle shifting in their favor. The rogues, now outnumbered and overwhelmed, fought with desperate ferocity, but they were no match for the combined might of Kevin, Aurelia, and the reinforcements. As the last rogue fell, silence descended upon the chamber. The Indarian soldiers secured the area, ensuring that the Zephyron was safe and shielded from any further attempts to seize it. Kevin lowered his weapon, a profound sense of relief washing over him. He turned to Aurelia, who met his gaze with a mixture of exhaustion and gratitude. "It's over," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Kevin nodded, the weight of their victory settling upon him. "For now. But if the rogues were willing to go to these lengths, it won't be the last time we face them." Aurelia's expression grew serious, a spark of resolve in her eyes. "Then we'll be ready, together." As they stood side by side, surrounded by the remnants of the battle, Kevin felt a newfound bond with Aurelia and her people, a connection that transcended the boundaries of planets and species. They had fought for a cause greater than themselves, and in doing so, they had forged a powerful alliance. The journey had been perilous, and the future remained uncertain, but one thing was clear. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Kevin and Aurelia would face them together, united in their mission to protect their worlds and the fragile peace of the galaxy.